Thank you. Thanks for the welcome. Thanks, Bob Vander Plaats, for the leadership you provided for this state. We have been on the same battle together a number of times, but we've never been on the same presidential candidate together. And this time we are. I hadn't made an endorsement of a president in 8 years. And they asked me 4 years ago, why didn't you do that? And I said, it has to be a conviction. It isn't like just going down through the menu and picking a name out of there and say, I think I'll try this now, and tomorrow I'll be hungry and I can try something else if I don't like it. This is an irrevocable decision that we're making here in Iowa. It's irreversible. It's an American destiny decision that we're making here in Iowa. And it has to be a conviction. And so, how do I arrive at that? I know the date, November 13th, 2015, I reached that conviction, and I couldn't wait to have a press conference to tell you all my conviction. But it comes this way. First, it has to be a decision made of the head. You've got to use all your analytical abilities, gather all the data you can, identify your values, you've already done that, and then go down through and see who checks all the boxes. Well, I did this thing. I'm searching around, and sometimes I get a little internet insomnia, and I'm finding these rabbit trails, and I found a website out there, and it was one you could test yourself to find out, who do you want to support for president? And so I started answering these questions. Do you believe that human life is sacred in all of its forms? Yeah, I do. And at what moment does life begin? Moment of conception. Do you think marriage should be between something other than a man and woman? No, I think it should be between a man and a woman. So I'm checking all these boxes along the way. What about the Second Amendment? Do you believe in the right to keep and bear arms? Yes, I do. So I'm answering these. It took quite a while, maybe 35, 40 minutes or so to answer all these questions. And it won't tell you who you're supposed to support for president until you hit enter down there on the bottom. So I got all the questions answered, and I got ready to click enter, and I thought, uh-oh. I push this button, and it comes up Bernie Sanders. What am I going to do? But I sucked it up and pushed the button. Whose name do you think showed up on that screen? Ted Cruz. So there's an analytical part there that says, get behind Ted Cruz, but that just supported the things that I'd known for quite some time. I first learned who Ted Cruz was when I went over to hear the 10 Commandments argued before the United States Supreme Court. And I had to climb through a hedge that day to get in because there were so many protesters around the front. But I was not deterred, of course. I climbed through the hedge, went to the door, got in there, and I sat down to hear the arguments. And up front were two people there from Texas, Ted Cruz, Greg Abbott. And Greg Abbott's the governor now. Ted Cruz is, of course, the next president of the United States. And I thought, who is this young man up here that's worked? So then I started to ask questions and find out. And I looked into it a little bit. Not too much after that, he decided he was going to run for the United States Senate. Heidi may tell you this, but the polling when he began to run for the United States Senate, Ted Cruz was at 2%. And Heidi says, yeah, but Ted, it was a 3% margin of error. So you were a -1. Not to be deterred, they jumped into that, and they took that over and won that by 14% in the state of Texas. And through the course of his professional career, 9 times he's argued cases before the Supreme Court. Argued to defend life. The partial birth abortion case that I helped put the legislation together, Ted successfully defended that before the United States Supreme Court. He's defended life, he's defended marriage, he's defended guns. He wrote the amicus brief on the Heller case that led to the first real case that we'd won on Second Amendment. Whenever there was a fight, I'd try to go get into it as quick as I could. Sometimes I got there ahead of Ted and he was next to me. Sometimes he got there ahead of me and I found him. But we fought together in the trenches all along from the time he emerged publicly. And I recall a press conference that I held June 19th, 2013. And I couldn't get John Boehner to have a legitimate debate in the House. They were pushing the Gang of 8 bill through the Senate. So I rented a stage like this, only a little lower, big old speaker system, and I said, we're going to have an 8-hour press conference on immigration. And I invited House members. Often they'll come and stand and fight. And I invited senators too. Well, House members came to guard my back. Out of the 100 United States senators, didn't invite them all obviously, 1 showed up. Who do you think that was? Ted Cruz. And he did 45 minutes up on that stage, and he delivered chapter and verse of the things that we believe in: secure the border, restore the rule of law, end sanctuary cities, put a good E-Verify system in place, all of that and more. And that policy today is on his website, tedcruz.org, 11 pages of it. and it's signed off on by, and he'll tell you this publicly, it's signed off on by Jeff Sessions of Alabama, Steve King of Iowa, and signed by Ted Cruz, holding his ground and holding his principles. And there are people that say that somehow he's moved on principle. Not at all. I even had him ask me this on TV. Well, hasn't Ted Cruz flipped his position on Obamacare? Obamacare? Repeal every word of Obamacare. That's what he said. I say, rip it out by the roots. That's pretty close. I think we agree. And I said he stood on all of our principles. He checks all the boxes. And we've got a chance in a lifetime to bounce someone out of Iowa on a springboard to New Hampshire who believes in the things that we do, that understands the pillars of American exceptionalism. And what do they say? They say, well, now they're down to the left side of the party, the establishment wing of the party. They're looking for an argument because he's right on everything. So their argument is, well, we don't think he can get along with Mitch McConnell. We think that's all right, don't we? And when they ask him that question at a town hall meeting, I think it was up in Fenton, Iowa here about yesterday or the day before, how will you deal with Mitch McConnell if you're elected president of the United States? And Ted smiled and he said, with delight. I know I can work with Ted Cruz, and we've worked with him on the immigration policy. We've worked with him on the ethanol policy. I've worked with him on a good number of other things, but I'm not the only one. When they ask that question, they say, well, what about the endorsements that he has? Well, what about the endorsement that others don't have? I mean, aside from the state of Florida, there's no candidate out there that has as many congressional endorsements as Ted Cruz. And I look around, I mean, he's got a dozen or more of those endorsements from Congress. And let me see, Donald Trump has goose egg. Nice call. And so I look, who comes then to guard Ted's back here in Iowa? Well, I look around at some friends here, just scanning the crowd. Let me see, Mo Brooks, Alabama, right here. Endorses Ted Cruz. He's a fighter. He stands for the right things. And that's Mo's point. He'll work with anybody that stands for the right thing and work in the right direction. Let me look around here for it. Well, Alex Moody is here. These guys volunteered to come up here and support Ted Cruz, West Virginia. He crawled out underneath 40 inches of snow to be here. Just stand up and support Ted Cruz. Louis Gohmert has been here more than once to support Ted Cruz. And so that's what we have in front of us, an opportunity of a lifetime. And I want to explain one thing to you here before I introduce Heidi, and that's this. I have this spoon in my pocket. That's how I illustrate what's going on here. Okay, just a nice little handy tool, right? This spoon made people fat. We should outlaw it. No, that was a wrong joke. It was this. Sometimes we just play the cassette in our head. But what it really is this, that I finally learned how to understand Ted Cruz. And it's because of the way my upbringing. I learned the Code of Iowa and the Constitution at the kitchen table from my father, and the Bible was on the end table. But I finally learned from Ted, he was spoon-fed the Bible and the Constitution at the kitchen table. Spoon-fed, so it's like, here you go, here's Genesis, here's Exodus, here's Leviticus, here's Numbers, here's Deuteronomy, here's Article 1 of the Constitution. Congress writes the laws, President Obama. And here's Article 2, that's the limited powers of the executive branch. Oh, wait a minute, here's Leviticus again. Chew on that a while if you're a Democrat. They have a little trouble digesting Leviticus these days. But Ted Cruz learned the Bible and the Constitution little on up. It's in his bones. And he believes it in every act of his young life, right down to memorizing the Constitution in high school and arguing it all over the state of Texas, on up to today. When he faces people down, friend or foe, it's on principle. It's the principles that we believe in. And he has a wife that is just a glorious, wonderful lady that will grace the White House in a way we haven't seen in our memory in our lifetime. And so Ted often walks into a room, and he doesn't have to wonder very often if there's anybody in that room that's smarter than he is. I do. He doesn't have to do that. And I'm glad he's got that extra brain power. But when Heidi walks in the room, then the question comes up. And so I want you to, also, watching Heidi. She's got this marvelous talent. She's a businesswoman in her own right, a tremendous executive success. She's a wonderful political wife. She's a wonderful mother, and I've watched her in all of those arenas, and she goes through this smooth as silk through everything, covering everything along the way. I can't wait for Christmas and the Christmas ball at the White House when we have an opportunity then to say Merry Christmas by the tree, and let's say a great big Iowa welcome to the next First Lady of the United States of America, Heidi Cruz.